Picture this. It's May 5th, 1945. World War II is ending. In 3 days, Germany will surrender. But high in the Austrian Alps, inside a medieval castle, something is about to happen that has never happened before in military history. American soldiers and German soldiers are about to fight side by side, not against each other, together, against a common enemy. Fanatical Waffen-SS troops who refuse to accept that the war is over. This sounds like fiction, like a movie plot, but every word I'm about to tell you is documented fact, verified by military records, survivor testimonies, and historical archives. This is the story of the Battle of Castle Itter, the day enemies became allies, and the strangest battle of World War II. Let me set the scene. Schloss Itter, Castle Itter, is a medieval fortress sitting on a hilltop in the Austrian Tyrol region, near the town of Virgil. It's the kind of castle you see in a fairy tale. Stone walls, towers, surrounded by mountains. Beautiful, remote, isolated, but between 1943 and 1945, this castle isn't a tourist attraction. It's a prison, a very special prison. The SS has turned it into what they call an Ehrenhaftung facility, a place for high-value prisoners. Not ordinary POWs. We're talking about some of the most important French political and military leaders of World War II held here as hostages. Who's imprisoned in this castle? Let me introduce you to them, because these aren't just random prisoners. These are people whose names you recognize from history books. There's Edouard Daladier, who was Prime Minister of France in 1940. He's the man who signed the Munich Agreement with Hitler in 1938, trying to appease Germany. That didn't work out well, and now he's been a prisoner since 1940 to 5 years. There's Paul Reynaud, another former French Prime Minister. He was in charge when France fell in 1940. After the defeat, the Vichy government arrested him and handed him over to the Germans. There's General Maxime Weygand, who commanded French forces in 1940 during the German invasion. He's a legend in French military circles, 78 years old in 1945, and he's been in prison since 1942. There's General Maurice Gamelin, another French military commander. These two generals blame each other for France's defeat in 1940. They've been locked in the same castle for years, probably not speaking to each other much. And there are others. François de Larac, a French right-wing politician. Michel Clemenceau, the son of Georges Clemenceau, the Clemenceau, France's prime minister during World War I. Marie-Agnès Caillot, who happens to be Charles de Gaulle's older sister, yes, the de Gaulle who's leading Free France from London. And my personal favorite, Jean Borotra. Who is Jean Borotra? He's a tennis champion, Wimbledon champion actually, one of the 4 musketeers of French tennis in the 1,920 seconds and 30 seconds. He's 46 years old in 1945, fit, athletic, and we'll come back to him because he's going to be a hero in this story. These people are valuable hostages. The SS has been treating them relatively well compared to concentration camp prisoners anyway, because they're potential bargaining chips. But as the war enters its final days, their situation is about to get very dangerous. By late April 1945, it's obvious to everyone that Germany is losing. The Russians are in Berlin. Hitler is about to commit suicide. The Western Allies are sweeping across Germany. The end is days away. On April 30th, 1945, the same day Hitler kills himself in his bunker, something happens at Castle Itter. The SS guards who have been running this prison for 2 years suddenly disappear. They just leave. In the middle of the night, they abandon their posts and flee. The French prisoners wake up on May 1st to find themselves free. The gates are open. The guards are gone. But here's the problem. They're in the middle of nowhere, high in the Austrian Alps, in a country that's collapsing into chaos. There are still German units fighting in the area. There are Waffen-SS fanatics who refuse to accept defeat. And the French prisoners know that if SS troops find them, former enemy leaders who've been held as hostages, they'll probably be executed rather than left alive as witnesses. So what do? They need help. They need protection. But from whom? The nearest American forces are miles away. They don't have radios. They don't have weapons. They're just a group of middle-aged and elderly French politicians and officers stuck in a castle. This is where a remarkable man enters the story. Major Joseph Gangl. Everyone calls him Sepp. He's a Wehrmacht officer, German army, 46 years old, career military. He fought in World War I, served in the Wehrmacht through World War II. But by May 1945, Sepp Gangl has had enough. He's seen enough. He knows Germany has lost. He knows the Nazi regime is evil. And he's made a decision. He's not following orders anymore. In the final weeks of the war, Gangl has been secretly helping the Austrian resistance in the Virgil area. He's been hiding weapons, helping Austrian civilians, preparing for the end. When he hears that there are high-value French prisoners abandoned at Castle Itter, just a few miles away, he makes another decision. He's going to save them. But Gangl knows he can't do this alone with just his small group of Wehrmacht soldiers who followed him into resistance. He needs more help. So he does something that would have been unthinkable just weeks earlier. He goes looking for American troops. On May 3rd, Gangl makes contact with an American unit, the 23rd Tank Battalion of the U.S. 12th Armored Division. They've been advancing through Austria, accepting surrenders, mopping up resistance, and now here comes a German Wehrmacht officer, in uniform, walking up to them with his hands raised. But he's not surrendering. He's asking for help. The American officer he meets is Captain John C. Jack Lee Jr., a 27-year-old tank commander from Norwich, Connecticut. Lee is understandably confused. A German officer is asking him to help rescue French VIPs from SS troops? Is this a trap? Is this real? Gangl explains the situation. There are French prisoners, important ones, at Castle Itter. They're undefended. There are Waffen-SS units in the area that refuse to surrender. These SS fanatics are hunting down traitors, anyone who surrendered, anyone who helped the Allies, anyone they consider disloyal. If they find these French VIPs, they'll kill them. Lee makes a decision. This is the end of the war. Things are chaotic. But these are Allied civilians, French leaders, in danger. And this German officer seems genuine. Lee agrees. He'll help, so they make a plan. Lee will take a small force, about 10 to 14 American soldiers, including his tank crew, and head to Castle Itter. Gangl will come with him, along with about 10 Wehrmacht soldiers who've been following him. Together, Americans and Germans, former enemies, they're going to defend this castle against their former comrades, the SS. This is already bizarre, right? But it gets better. They need more help. So Gangl reaches out to Andreas Krobot, a local Austrian resistance fighter. Krobot and his men join the force. Now you've got Americans, Germans, and Austrian resistance fighters. 3 groups who would have been shooting at each other a month ago, all heading to the same castle to fight together. On the evening of May 4th, 1945, this unlikely group arrives at Castle Itter. The French prisoners can't believe what they're seeing. American soldiers, German soldiers, together? What's happening? Captain Lee explains, "We're here to protect you. There are SS units in the area. They're coming. We're going to defend this castle until reinforcements arrive." The French VIPs, these former prime ministers and generals, they're not passive victims. Remember, Weygand and Gamelin are military commanders. Daladier and Reynaud have been in combat before. They fought in World War I. They immediately start helping prepare defenses. They grab weapons. Old enemies, French and German, are now allies. Captain Lee positions his biggest asset at the castle's main gate, one M4 Sherman tank. It's nicknamed Besotted Jenny, which is a play on words, besotted meaning drunk. The tank crew drives it right up to the castle entrance, blocking the main approach. American soldiers and Wehrmacht soldiers position themselves around the castle walls. They've got rifles, machine guns, some anti-tank weapons. The castle is on a hill, which gives them some defensive advantage, but it's not designed for modern warfare. Medieval castles weren't built to defend against machine guns and anti-tank weapons. The French VIPs are armed too. General Weygand, 78 years old, takes a rifle and positions himself at a window. These men were soldiers once. They remember how to fight, and then they wait, because the intelligence is clear. SS troops are coming. Elements of the 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division, die-hard fanatics who refuse to believe the war is over, are heading toward the castle. They know there are traitors there. Wehrmacht soldiers who've switched sides, French collaborators who work with the resistance. The SS is coming to kill them. May 5th, 1945, about 4:00 the morning. The SS attack begins. The SS has about 100 to 150 soldiers. They're not a cohesive unit. They're remnants of various units, stragglers, fanatics who've banded together. but they're heavily armed and they're motivated by ideology and anger. They're not here to take prisoners. They're here to kill traitors. They open fire with small arms, then heavier weapons. They've got an 88 millimeters anti-tank gun, the famous German 88, that's one of the best anti-tank weapons of the war. They start shelling the castle. Inside the castle, Americans and Germans are firing back, side by side. This is happening. Former enemies, shooting at former comrades, defending former enemy civilians. The whole situation is surreal. The 88 millimeters gun finds its target, Besotten Jenny, the Sherman tank at the gate. The shell hits. The tank is damaged, not completely destroyed, but it can't move. The crew bails out and takes cover inside the castle. Now the main entrance is vulnerable. The SS troops start advancing. They're trying to get into the castle. American and German soldiers are holding them off, but ammunition is running low. The situation is getting desperate. And this is where Jean Borotra, the tennis champion, does something incredible. Borotra volunteers for a mission that sounds like suicide. Someone needs to get out of the castle, get past the SS lines, and reach the nearest American forces to bring reinforcements. The castle is surrounded. SS troops are everywhere. Anyone trying to leave will be shot. Borotra is 46 years old, but he's still athletic, still fast. And he knows these mountains. He's been imprisoned here for years. He's seen the terrain. He volunteers. Around mid-morning, Borotra climbs down from the castle wall on the side that's less heavily attacked. He drops to the ground and starts running. Full sprint, dodging through trees, using every bit of cover. SS soldiers spot him and open fire. Bullets are hitting trees around him. But Borotra keeps running. He runs 4 kilometers, about 2.5 miles, through enemy territory, through the Alps, until he reaches the Austrian town of Wurgel, where American forces are stationed. He arrives completely exhausted, gasping for breath, and tells them, "Castle Itter, French VIPs, under attack, need help now." Back at the castle, the battle's getting more intense. The SS has brought up more heavy weapons, they're trying to breach the walls, ammunition is critically low, and then, around 1 p.m., tragedy strikes. Major Sepp Gangl, the German Wehrmacht officer who started all this, who reached out to the Americans, who organized this defense, is fighting alongside his former enemies to protect French prisoners. He's at a window, firing at SS positions. An SS sniper across the way has a clear shot at one of the French VIPs. Paul Reynaud, the former French Prime Minister, is standing near a window. The sniper aims, fires. Gangl sees it. In a split second, he moves. He jumps in front of Reynaud. The bullet meant for the French politician hits Gangl instead. It's a fatal wound. Think about what just happened. A German Wehrmacht officer just took a bullet to save a French Prime Minister. 5 years earlier, Germany and France were at war. German forces invaded France. Now, a German soldier dies, protecting a French leader from other Germans. Gangl dies within minutes. His last words, according to witnesses, are to his men: "Keep fighting. Protect them." Gangl's death hits everyone hard. The Americans, the remaining Wehrmacht soldiers, the French VIPs, they all respected him. He was the one who made this impossible alliance happen. And now he's gone, killed by his own countrymen while protecting former enemies. But his death isn't in vain, because about 2 p.m., roughly an hour after Gangl is killed, they hear something. Engines. Lots of engines. Jean Borotra did it. He got through. Reinforcements are arriving. The U.S. 142nd Infantry Regiment, along with elements of the 12th Armored Division, are coming up the mountain road in force. Tanks, armored vehicles, infantry. A real relief force. When the SS troops see this, American tanks, fresh troops, overwhelming force, they break off the attack. Some surrender, some try to escape into the mountains. The battle is over. The siege lasted about 10 hours. Every single French VIP is alive. Not one was killed or even seriously wounded. One American soldier was wounded, not fatally. Several Wehrmacht soldiers were wounded, and Major Sepp Gangl gave his life. When the French VIPs are finally safe, when they're being evacuated by American forces, they insist on one thing: Major Joseph Gangl must be honored. He saved their lives. He died protecting them. Paul Reynaud, the man Gangl died to save, later writes, "He was a German soldier who became a hero by choosing honor over orders. He fought not for a regime, but for what was right." General Weygand, who fought against Germany in 2 world wars, says of Gangl, "He was a better man than many who wore our uniform." 3 days later, on May 8th, 1945, Germany officially surrenders. The war in Europe is over. The Battle of Castle Itter was one of the last engagements of World War II, and it was the only time in the war that American and German forces fought on the same side. What happened to everyone after? Captain Jack Lee received the Distinguished Service Cross, one of America's highest military honors. He returned to Connecticut, got married, lived a normal life. He rarely talked about Castle Itter. When he did, people didn't believe him. "You fought alongside Germans?" It sounded like fiction. Jean Borotra, the tennis champion who made that incredible run through enemy fire, returned to France and continued his tennis career. He lived until 1994, dying at age 95. He told the story of Castle Itter many times, and every time, people were amazed. The other French VIPs returned home to France. Daladier and Reynaud returned to politics, though neither reached their former positions of power. General Weygand wrote his memoirs and died in 1965 at age 98. He always credited Gangl with saving his life. And Major Joseph Sepp Gangl, he was buried in Virgil, Austria, the town where he'd been helping the resistance. The Austrian government recognized him posthumously as a resistance fighter, and the only Wehrmacht officer to receive that designation. There's a street named after him in Virgil, Major Ganglstrasse. There's a memorial plaque at Castle Itter that tells his story. Gangl's story is complicated. He was a Wehrmacht officer, he served in Hitler's military, but at the end, when it mattered, he chose to do the right thing. He defied orders. He helped the resistance, he protected prisoners, and he gave his life to save a former enemy. Is he a hero? The French thought so, the Americans thought so, the Austrians thought so. History has judged him as a man who redeemed himself in the final act. Castle Itter still stands today. It's privately owned now, converted into luxury apartments and vacation rentals. You can actually stay there. There's a small museum with information about the battle. The castle looks pretty much like it did in 1945. Same medieval walls, same towers, same stunning alpine views. If you visit, there's a plaque by the main gate that reads in German, English, and French. On this spot, on May 5th, 1945, American and German soldiers fought side by side to defend French prisoners from SS attack. Major Joseph Gangl of the Wehrmacht gave his life to save former enemies. This was the strangest battle of World War II. The story of Castle Itter has been told in books, documentaries, even a proposed movie that's been in development for years. Stephen Harding wrote the definitive book about it in 2013, called The Last Battle, based on military records, interviews with survivors, and archival research. So, why does this story matter? Why am I telling you about a small battle that lasted one day in a castle most people have never heard of, involving fewer than 200 combatants total? Because it shows something important about war, about people, about moral choices. The Battle of Castle Itter happened on May 5th, 1945. The war was effectively over. Germany had lost. Hitler was dead. Everyone knew it was finished. But some people, the SS fanatics, refused to accept reality. They were willing to kill prisoners, to murder civilians, to keep fighting for a cause that was already dead. And other people, Lee, Gangl, the American soldiers, the Wehrmacht soldiers who followed Gangl, made a different choice. They chose to protect innocent people rather than follow orders blindly. They chose to work with former enemies rather than let people die. Gangl especially. He could have hidden. He could have just waited for the war to end. He could have thought, why should I risk my life for French prisoners? But he didn't. He took action, and it cost him his life. The Battle of Castle Itter teaches us that even in war, even when people have been enemies, even when everything is chaos and violence and hatred, human decency can still exist. People can still choose to do the right thing. It shows us that soldiers are not just their uniforms. They're individuals who can think, who can make moral choices, who can decide that orders don't justify murder. It shows us that the categories we create, enemy and ally, us and them, those categories can change. Yesterday's enemy can be today's ally if you're both fighting for something that matters more than old hatreds. And it reminds us that history is full of moments that don't fit the simple narrative. World War II isn't just Americans versus Germans. It's more complicated. There were Germans who resisted Hitler. There were Americans who fought alongside Germans. There were moments when the moral lines became clear and people on both sides recognized them. The last survivor with direct memory of the Battle of Castle Itter was likely Jean Barotra, who died in 1994. All the combatants are gone now. The French VIPs, the American soldiers, the Wehrmacht soldiers who fought there, they're all part of history now. But the story lives on, and maybe that's what they would have wanted. Not to be forgotten, not to have this moment when enemies became allies, when a German soldier gave his life for French prisoners, when Americans and Germans fought together to disappear into the massive history of World War II. The Battle of Castle Itter lasted about 10 hours, but it represents something timeless, that even in humanity's darkest moments, individuals can still choose honor over hate, compassion over cruelty, and doing what's right over following orders. That's the story of the strangest battle of World War II, a medieval castle in the Alps. French prisoners, American soldiers, German soldiers, and Austrian resistance fighters all on the same side. An SS attack, a tennis champion's run for help, a German officer's sacrifice, and a battle that should never have happened but changed everyone who was part of it.